Welcome back to Intelligent Survival, where history isn't just remembered, it's used. Today's story begins with something that should make any rational mind pause. A pill, cheap, simple, and promising to solve a problem that has burdened humanity for over a century. Fuel efficiency. It's not a new engine design, not a breakthrough in physics. Just a small tablet dropped into your tank, claiming to stretch every liter of fuel far beyond what engineers and scientists have ever achieved. That kind of promise has a pattern. It appears in moments of economic pressure. When fuel prices rise and frustration builds, it spreads quickly because it offers relief without effort. And it survives because it borrows credibility from real history, real betrayals, real corporate misconduct, real reasons people have learned to distrust powerful industries. But here's the critical point. Not every story built on truth leads to truth. What we're going to do today is strip this down to its foundations. Not with speculation, not with opinions, but with history, physics, and hard mechanical reality. Because the real survival skill here isn't just knowing what works, it's knowing what cannot work, no matter how convincing the story sounds. The modern claim follows a familiar structure because it has been refined over decades. Take a common chemical, combine it with another easily accessible substance, and present it as a hidden key to efficiency. In this case, the mixture often involves compounds like naphthalene and acetone, shaped into a tablet and introduced into fuel. The explanation sounds technical enough to pass a surface-level check. It talks about surface tension, incomplete combustion, and wasted fuel escaping through exhaust systems. At first glance, it feels plausible. But history has shown us that plausibility is the favorite tool of deception. To understand why people are willing to believe this, you have to look at a real moment when industry did make a catastrophic decision. In the early 20th century, as automobiles became widespread, engineers faced a serious problem: engine knock. It threatened to destroy engines from the inside, and a solution was urgently needed. Ethanol, a clean and effective additive, had already proven capable of solving the issue. It worked, it was known, it was available. But it had one fatal flaw: it couldn't be controlled. Anyone with basic resources could produce ethanol. It wasn't something a corporation could monopolize. So instead, a different solution was chosen: tetraethyllead. It solved the mechanical problem, but it introduced something far worse: widespread environmental and neurological damage. Workers exposed to it suffered hallucinations, insanity, and death. Facilities handling it became notorious for their conditions. And despite clear warnings from medical experts, it was pushed into global use for decades. This wasn't conspiracy theory. It was documented history. And it created a lasting distrust that still shapes how people interpret claims today. That distrust is understandable. But it also creates vulnerability. Because once people accept that powerful institutions have lied before, they become more willing to believe that every hidden claim must be true. And that is where the danger lies. The idea that a simple additive could dramatically increase fuel efficiency runs directly into one of the most rigid boundaries in science: thermodynamics. Engines are not mysterious systems. They are heat machines. They convert chemical energy into motion, and that conversion has limits that cannot be bypassed. Even in ideal conditions, perfect materials, zero friction, complete combustion, there is a maximum efficiency that cannot be exceeded. In real-world engines, that efficiency is significantly lower due to unavoidable losses. Heat escapes, friction consumes energy, materials degrade. Gasoline itself is already highly optimized. It contains a specific amount of energy per unit mass, and modern engines are designed to extract as much of that energy as possible. When you introduce a substance like acetone, you're not enhancing that energy, you're diluting it. You are adding something with lower energy content into a system that depends entirely on energy density. For the claim of massive efficiency gains to be true, the engine would need to exceed its theoretical limits. It would have to produce more work from less energy. That isn't innovation, that's impossibility. And then there is the mechanical reality, which is far less forgiving than theory. Fuel systems are built with precision. The materials used, synthetic rubbers, specialized polymers, are selected specifically because they can withstand long-term exposure to fuel. But those materials are not universally resistant. They are designed for non-polar substances like gasoline. Introduce a polar solvent like acetone, and the entire balance changes. The chemical interaction begins at a microscopic level. The structure of the rubber starts to break down. It swells, weakens, and eventually loses its integrity. Seals that once held pressure begin to fail. Fuel leaks develop. And in a system where flammable liquid is constantly moving under pressure, failure is not just inconvenient, it is dangerous. At the same time, internal engine components begin to suffer. Lubrication is compromised. Protective films are stripped away. Metal surfaces that should glide begin to grind. The damage doesn't happen all at once. It accumulates, slowly, consistently, until the system reaches a point where failure is inevitable. And the irony is brutal. What was marketed as a way to save money ends up accelerating wear, increasing repair costs, and shortening the lifespan of the engine itself. If this sounds familiar, it should, because this exact pattern has repeated itself for over a century. During the early 1900s, inventors claimed they could run engines on water with secret additives. Demonstrations were staged. Investors poured in money. And eventually, the truth surfaced: hidden fuel sources, chemical tricks, and outright fraud. In later decades, similar schemes emerged across different countries, each with its own variation of the same promise. A miracle solution, a suppressed technology, it's a simple fix to a complex problem. And every time the outcome was the same: exposure, collapse, and loss. The details change, but the structure never does. There is always a narrative of discovery, a claim of resistance from powerful forces, and a sense that the buyer is part of something exclusive. That emotional component is critical. It transforms a product into a belief. And once belief takes hold, evidence becomes secondary. But survival, real survival, has never been built on belief. It has always depended on verification. When you strip away the noise, the solutions that actually work are almost disappointingly simple. Maintain your engine properly. Use fuel that meets established standards. Ensure airflow is not restricted. Keep tires at correct pressure. Drive with consistency rather than aggression. None of these actions will double your fuel efficiency overnight. But they will improve performance in measurable ways. More importantly, they preserve the integrity of the system over time. And that is the difference between a shortcut and a strategy. History makes this clear across every domain. The practices that have saved lives and resources were rarely dramatic. Clean water, sanitation, proper maintenance, these were not revolutionary in appearance, but they were transformative in impact. They worked because they aligned with reality instead of trying to bypass it. The same principle applies here. When you encounter a claim that promises extraordinary results with minimal effort, the question isn't whether it sounds convincing. The question is whether it holds up under scrutiny. Does it align with known laws of physics? Does it have verifiable evidence? Has it been tested independently? And perhaps most importantly, if it truly worked, would it still be hidden? Because real breakthroughs don't stay hidden. They scale. They spread. They become standard. It's not because of secrecy, but because of value. The story of the fuel tablet isn't just about chemistry or engines. It's about judgment. It's about recognizing patterns, understanding incentives, and resisting the pull of easy answers. Because in the end, the most valuable skill you can develop isn't mechanical or technical, it's critical thinking. The ability to pause, analyze, and demand proof before taking action. That skill protects more than your engine. It protects your time, your money, and your decisions. If this breakdown sharpened your perspective and gave you a clearer lens to evaluate the next big claim you come across, make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who needs to see it. Because the more people understand how these patterns work, the harder it becomes for them to succeed. Stay observant. Stay disciplined. And most importantly, stay grounded in reality.